is the Silver and Black Today podcast, your source for Raiders news and information. Now, here's your hosts, swaggering boisterously.
Welcome back, Raider Nation. Silver and Black Today podcast, where we find the Raiders sitting at 1-4. And for those of you who thought the Raiders were going to win 10, 11 games, not going to happen. But we're here to talk again about Raiders football. I'm Scott Gulbransen, and joined as we are on the podcast now, always, by our good friend, our senior NFL writer, columnist, and that is Hayden Nadolny. Hayden, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing very well, thanks, Scott.
Awesome. Okay, well, we got a lot to talk about, and including the things you will find in Hayden's popular column, Any Given Monday, which you can find on silverandblacktoday.com. It's up every Monday morning to give you the lowdown on the game the day before, if it's a Sunday game, and also Hayden runs through some of his thoughts around not only the Raiders, but some other at-large NFL issues, if they relate. So, Hayden, let's jump right in. And one of the things that you focused on in your column this week, I really want to talk about, because I don't think any fans of the Raiders or even the media covering them understands why in goal line situations or in short yardage situations, Marshawn Lynch is not getting the ball. I just can't, we wrote the headline unfathomable, and I think that's a word that fits. What's going on here? Why is Marshawn Lynch not getting the ball in situations like we saw on a 4th and 1 at the goal line last week?
He has been getting it to a degree, but I think there's certainly a concern, at least from my behalf, that he hasn't been getting it more when it comes to being on the 1 yard line. I mean, we saw earlier in the year, even against Miami, 1 yard out, and they pounded it up the middle with Keith Smith, the fullback, on 4th down instead of going to beast mode. So there's certainly, I think Gruden is trying to stay balanced and ensure that he doesn't go away from it. He doesn't have any specific tendencies that the defenses can zone in and key in on going forward. But look, he's the best goal line running back in football. He's a power back, and there's really no reason why, when it comes down to it, you just have to trust that your guy is going to get in the end zone, and I'm not sure there's a better guy to trust than Marshawn Lynch in that situation. Yeah, in the post-game press conference now, both Jon Gruden and Derek Carr, who clearly talked beforehand because their answers were so similar, it sounded like they had a little powwow beforehand. They said, look, we saw something in the defense, and that's why we went with the pass. But when you have Marshawn Lynch, who routinely, as you said, drags bodies with him, and usually, hey, every running back can be stuffed and get no gain. But when you're first down, as you point out, you're down by 17 points in the third quarter. If you score there and you do it, then it's a 10-point game. Then it's 2 scores. But is this a case? And this is what I think, and you touched on a little bit, is where sometimes coaches think, hey, they get a little too smart for their own good, right? Which is like, hey, I see something, so I'm going to exploit it, instead of maybe going with what they know is their best possible chance of scoring in that situation. Completely. They get way too cute too many times, and you see that it just has negative effects. I mean, I think I saw a stat come up recently. I don't know the exact numbers, but something like since the Super Bowl, where Lynch infamously didn't get the handoff on the 1 yard line. Mm-hmm. There have been 4 similar occasions since that Super Bowl play, and on all 4 occasions it hasn't been a run to Lynch, and it's just it boggles my mind. I don't understand it. I don't understand it either, and to me that's the thing. You see what's happening with this offense, and there was so much. I think there was lofty expectations around this offense because of what Raider fans were privy to last year, where they really had no cohesive offense or scheme that really made any sense. So then you have Jon Gruden come in. That's his forte. He's going to be an offensive-minded coach. This is the guy who's going to get Derek Carr over the hump. And with the weapons they have, including Amari Cooper, you thought that there would be a little more creativity. We see it at times, right, Hayden? We see certain segments of plays where you see that open offense. You see what people were excited about before they ever took the field. But at the same time,
it's not consistent. And then when it really means something in the red zone, they're not bringing it out.
No, and I think schematically, Gruden's done some great work. I really do. He's really drawing up some plays and getting the defense favorable. Like, he's putting the offense in favorable positions against defensive coverages and giving Carr a lot of easy completions to a degree. But I think one of the biggest problems right now is that Carr's just finding it really difficult to get on the right page in terms of ensuring that he doesn't turn the football over, because it really is a case with the Raiders. They need to play near perfect football because the defense isn't able to generate turnovers themselves. So as soon as the Raiders have a few offensive turnovers, you lose points there. The field gets flipped. The defense is put in a vulnerable position and they give more points up, and the Raiders can't bounce back from it.
Well, and that's what I wonder now. We'll shift a little bit here to Derek Carr, since you mentioned him and you talk about him in your column on silverandblacktoday.com. And that is, if you look at what's Raider fans and to a certain degree the media, although not as much as the fans, are all over Derek Carr because of several really key poor decisions where he threw the ball in the end zone. And of course he did it this time with Melvin Ingram sitting right there, which of course it's easier on television to look at it and say, how the heck could he throw that ball when you can see two blue jerseys standing right there? But to me, is it a case, Hayden, of maybe Jon Gruden taking it too easy on Derek Carr? Because to your point, I look at the pass chart from last week. You ready for this? In the entire game, Derek Carr threw the ball over 10 yards 8 times out of his 33 attempts. Everything else was within 10 yards, including stuff in the backfield, right? So is it that he doesn't have the confidence in his quarterback to run that system yet, so he's giving him those easier passes, and then when he does need to make some plays, he's not making good decisions? Now, of course, the red zone stuff are short plays, but on some of the other plays and other passes he's thrown downfield, he hasn't been as successful.
I actually think it's more a case of Gruden's dialing up the plays and Carr's just playing too conservative, and he doesn't have the right balance between trying to zing the ball in there on some deep routes, but at the same time he doesn't want to turn the football over, and he's, in a way, I don't want to say he's playing scared, because he's not playing scared in which he's scared to take any hits or something, but he's so concerned about giving up the turnovers that he's pressing. And as a result, it's like, it's almost when you say, oh, I don't want this, I don't want this, I don't want this, it happens. And that's what's happening with Carr right now. And it's a big problem. It's a massive problem, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But here's go ahead, Hayden, go ahead.
Now, at the end of the day, he's had, 8 interceptions in his first 5 games?
That's right.
At one point or another, you're going to have to ask, well, this interception shouldn't have been thrown. This one shouldn't have been thrown. Oh, he'll be better next week. Well, at one point, you have to ask yourself, and I'm not sure when that point is going to be yet, but at one point or another, sometime between now and the end of the season, you're going to have to ask, is this a case of it's just going to be like this every week? Or can this be fixed? Because if this can't be fixed, well, then suddenly they're going to be looking at potentially getting another rookie quarterback in come next year's draft, because this can't continue. No matter, I love Derek Carr, but this cannot continue long term going forward. No,
it can't. I mean, especially people talk about the money, and I'm not one to say to some, well, because you pay him money, that's a good reason to throw the guy overboard because he's not playing up to his ability. But at the same time, it is a reason, because you invested money in him. It was one of the reasons that Khalil Mack is now in Chicago, let's face it. But if I look at Derek Carr right now, I'm not so much questioning the physical issues or physical ability or if he's got injuries or whatnot. Instead, I mean, you look at his 8 interceptions, Hayden, 4 of them were just purely poor decisions that you might expect from a rookie quarterback, but not somebody in their 5th year. 1 was a poorly thrown ball, and the other 3, you could argue, were issues with the receivers and routes, or receivers not catching a ball and it popping off their hand and getting intercepted. So about half of those were really poor decisions. And to me, that's the biggest concern, because I think Derek Carr's issue that is causing all of this is between the ears. He's a smart guy, but for whatever you talked about, and you even kind of couched the term scared, right? I don't think scared, but he's definitely tentative at times, and he's not trusting in the system, in his ability to perhaps take a little more risk, as you said, which I think was a perfect example, to go downfield. Because look, I'm not saying the guys need to throw 30 or 40 yard passes 15 times a game, but when you're throwing a majority of your passes under 10 yards, that's telling me that you're not picking up guys down. You're not willing to take that chance or maybe find a play that could break open an offensive drive for you.
No, exactly. And I also think Sunday's effort was in large part designed to get the ball out on shorter routes for Derek, specifically because of the two rookie tackles. I mean, Colton Miller's dealing with a grade 2 MCL strain, and that's, to be playing through that, he's one tough guy, because based on my experience in healthcare, that's not an easy injury just to continue to play through. Grade 1, yeah, you probably can, but grade 2, that's something that can keep guys out, especially in basketball, for instance. They do that in the NBA. They're out 6 to 8 weeks. So he's a tough guy for that. But Brandon Parker was in his first start, rookie, going up against a pretty good defense. But I really do think, and I'm going to mention this in my column next week, that Derek Carr struggles whenever there's a too high coverage and they just play soft man or a soft zone underneath. And he's struggled with that ever since Kansas City started to play that as far back as 2015. They were playing a too high look on him and just playing everything in front and keeping it very conservative. And he's really struggled with that, and other teams are now catching on to that. Yeah. And it's a problem. He needs to do something about it, and it's easy to say, we just take what the defense gives us. Well, no, sometimes you have to go the Al Davis route, and you need to take what you want. And he's not doing enough of that right now.
No, absolutely. And the other thing, I mean, Gruden doubled down again, saying that he was going to he would pass on. And you know what? As a coach, you should never have to explain play call in the future based on what you did in the past, because you learn and you move forward. But how much of the Derek Carr issues now, I mean, he's the player, he's the guy on the field making the decisions, there's no doubt about it. But the expectation was Jon Gruden was this quarterback whisperer, right? And he was going to come in and he was going to have this great relationship with Derek Carr. And of course, they played that up at the beginning of the year and the preseason and throughout the camp. And so how much of this is going to be on Jon Gruden?
I don't think a whole lot, because we already saw problems with Carr as far back as last year. So it's easy for you to jump ship and say, oh, well, Derek Carr was he wasn't already playing well to begin with. But I don't really see Gruden getting a lot of heat for it. I think he'll cop some, but he's a big enough boy to be able to handle it. I don't think it's going to be anywhere near as blown. Like if he gets, for whatever reason, let's say Derek Carr is not on the team next year, he completely bombs out the rest of the year and he goes, and I actually think that the bigger heat will be on Gruden for trading Khalil Mack, because you could have given Mack that big contract then. And instead, you've lost your so-called franchise quarterback, you've lost your franchise defensive edge rusher, and you're starting the thing completely from scratch when you potentially, had you identified that Carr was a problem 12 months ago, you could have moved on him a little bit earlier. You could have given Mack the big deal, and you would have been in a better position. But look, there's a lot of hypotheticals going into that question.
Well, and I don't think Derek Carr is going anywhere. I don't care what happens this year, because you can keep him through next year before you really have to make the tough decision. And I just don't. To your point, you laid it out very nicely, and they all are hypotheticals. Yes. But again, this team, as we know, and you mentioned as well in your column, this team needs a lot of help on defense too. They have some good young players that need to play into their roles But with the trade of Mack and with some of the holes they have there, they're going to need to fill that. And that means drafting, in my book, and what might look now like a high first-round pick, you're going to have to go after defense. So these folks that think that maybe the Raiders will draft a quarterback in the first or second round this year, I don't think it's going to happen. And so you got to see what happens. To me, if Derek Carr if 3 more weeks go by and we're seeing the same sort of issues, then I will be extremely concerned. I'm already concerned for all the reasons you mentioned, but you have to give him time to work out of it because it's a franchise quarterback and you can't give up on him after 5 games into one season.
No, completely. You can't give up on him yet. And I want to point to 2 players in particular who cop a lot of heat at times and they're able to bounce back and have some solid seasons. I mean, you look at Eli Manning, and I'm going to bring up his 2000. What year was it? Once in 2014, everyone wrote Eli Manning off. Okay, and he had a ridiculous touchdown to interception rate. It was 18 touchdowns, and he threw 27 interceptions in 2013. And back then, people had written him off. The next year comes 2014. They invest in him. They bring in Odell Beckham Jr. They change a few things up in their offense, and suddenly Eli Manning is throwing for nearly 4,500 yards, 30 touchdowns, and just 14 interceptions. Now, you can turn it around quickly. That's a big turnaround. And he was what, 10 plus years into his career at that stage.
Yep.
I also want to bring up another player that's more familiar to the Raiders as well, and that guy's Phillip Rivers. So in 2011, he threw 20 interceptions. Okay, and a lot of people had written Phillip Rivers off. Oh, he's declining. Well, a few years down the track, and he's like throwing 30 touchdowns like it's pretty basic. And even just going on 2016, okay, he had a good year. He threw 33 touchdowns, but he also threw 21 interceptions. The next year, last year, he bounces back with 28 and 10. And now look at this season, he's gone from strength to strength. He's in MVP territory right now. 13 touchdowns, just 2 interceptions at 70% completion rate. He's slinging the ball right now. So as a vet, you can come back from having a poor season. So I think there's certainly it might be a systemic problem for the rest of this year. I personally think that these problems with Carr aren't going to be fixed this season. I think it's going to be something that we're going to see all year, but it's certainly something that they can rectify. The question is going to come down to whether Jon Gruden believes it can be rectified. If he does, they're going to keep him going forward. If not, he's only got a $7.5 million cap hit if they were to cut him next year. So, and that would save them $15 million on the cap. So potentially they could cut Carr. They could sign a veteran such as, dare I say, a Ryan Fitzpatrick or a Sam Bradford, maybe try to look to acquire someone like Nick Foles. I think he would fit well in the Gruden offense. But again, it's hypotheticals. Right now, Derek Carr is the quarterback, and I certainly, given that the Mack trade was an all-in vote on Derek Carr, because Gruden believed that you couldn't have both on such a high deal. It means that Gruden's going to do everything in his power to try to make the Carr Gruden connection work. So,
right.
Look, it's one to watch going forward, but certainly not right now.
Well, and that's the thing too, Hayden. I mean, Raider fans are passionate, right? And we know that, and sometimes it leads them to say things that I think if you sit back and look at what the options are, aren't always the best thing to do. So if you want to jettison Derek Carr because he's at times had a horrible season when it comes to some decision making, what's your next option, right? To your point, if a Raider fan says get rid of Derek Carr and they say, okay, let's go get Ryan Fitzpatrick, Ryan Fitzpatrick had a great first 3 games and then boom, right? Now he's no longer starting. Now that had to do a little bit with Winston coming back, but at the same time, my point is the grass isn't always greener. And when you've invested that kind of money, yes, there is a natural end to things. And your point about the cap hit is dead on. They're going to have to make that choice, but you're right. That's going to be Jon Gruden's choice. They do not have any other viable backup quarterback right now with McCarron there, I believe, to where you could sit Carr if it continues and your record is such that you want to maybe get him to work on things and understand that if he's not doing the right work, he's not going to play. I just don't see a better option at this point, and I think you've invested so much in him that you got to stick with him this year and next year. But we shall see. Now, defense, Hayden. Before we let you go, Paul Guenther's system, right? Everybody talk about Paul Guenther. Now, the defense has, to me, not looked. To me, it looked better the first 2 weeks than it has the last 3. So I don't know. There's times when they play really well. We've seen better play in the defensive backfield. Now, this past week, with Darryl Worley coming back, has taken snaps from Garyon Conley. There's a lot of change going on there, which just tells me that Paul Guenther is out there saying, okay, you know what? I got some guys here who aren't going to be able to do what I need them to do, and so I'm going to mix it up a little bit, and we're going to do the best we can until we get some help.
Yeah, they're scrambling on defense right now. There's no question about that. I mean, you look at the amount of substitutions and different defensive packages that they're using right now. They're just, it's all over the shop. Guenther has more or less admitted that they don't have the players right now. And it's as simple as that. They don't have enough impact playmakers right now to go out there and make plays on defense. And they're going to be gashed this season. There's no doubt about that. And Raider fans are just going to have to deal with it.
Yeah, the Raider fans are passionate. They don't necessarily want to deal with. They just want to win like everybody else, which is understandable. But that's going to be a work in progress. And, you know, Hayden, we talked about this many times here on the podcast, on the radio show, on the website, that this was going to be a transition year. And when Vegas put the number of wins at 8, I thought that was high. I think if I'm correct, my prediction was they would win 7. I think this team struggles to win 5.
Oh yeah. At this point, I could see them winning like 3 or 4. But look, let's see how the team goes, especially on offense. If they are able to get Carr, or if Carr's able to get his interceptions down, maybe the defense can get like maybe a turnover here and there. They'll be able to win a few games that maybe were unexpected. But the schedule is not overly difficult. I can see them getting about 4 or 5 wins, but they're definitely going to have a top 10 pick this year.
Yeah, and it would be nice for me. I think the one thing I've said week in, week out is if we can just see continuous improvement. It doesn't have to be light years of improvement, meaning you go from a team where they're at now to being a high-powered team that's going to go to the playoffs, right? It's just seeing, for example, have Carr have a game where he doesn't make that key big mistake and we see him progress. The same thing with the defense. Look, not everything's going to go their way. They're going to get beat by better teams. They're going to give up the big play here and there. But if you can see progress, and you are seeing it, right? You're seeing some progress. There are bright spots. We're focusing a little bit on the negative because these are the things that need to be fixed. But overall, I think if you put it in context and you say, okay, I want to see these things improve over the course of the next rest of the season, next 13 weeks, then you can feel better about them going into 2019, knowing they're going to have a high draft pick, knowing they're going to be able to make some changes and get this team from a roster perspective really set for, and nobody wants to say it, I know, especially the fans up in Oakland, and sorry to say it, but they want to get set for that first year when they're in the stadium.
Exactly. The plan has always been to have a rock star entrance going into Las Vegas. And, I mean, that gives Gruden two really this season and next off-season to get it sorted. So he's got 2 off-seasons in which he can rebuild the team to how he likes, and I think that's more than enough time. Yeah. I mean, Gruden ultimately came here, I feel, not so much as to keep fans happy in Oakland, but I feel as though one of the big reasons they signed Gruden was because of the PSL sales went on sale at that time, and they went on sale to a lot of the Oakland fans. It's that simple, and they wanted to drive sales in Vegas, and that's one of the best ways to do it, because under Jack Del Rio, they were going nowhere. They've had a nice honeymoon period for a good probably 8-9 months, but that honeymoon period is more or less over. But hey, so are the PSL sales. So if we've got your money, we're taking it and running. It's a cool world we live in. But
yeah, it's a business.
That's the way it goes, yeah.
Yeah, it's a business. And I was at the Preview Center last weekend and talked with someone there who stated that they had 60,000 deposits on the waiting list. And that includes, so they've already sold a ton of seats inside at all levels, and they still have 60,000 people on the list. So definitely it did do that job of getting people excited. But now, of course, the media, who was not those members of the media who were not high on Jon Gruden coming back to the sidelines, their sort of narrative in the short term has been proven somewhat correct, at least in their minds. So it'll be interesting. If you want to follow Hayden, which I suggest you do on Twitter, it's HB Nadolny, HBNADOLNY. Again, he's our senior NFL writer at silverandblacktoday.com. And you can always catch him here on the podcast. We're going to get him on the radio show here soon, even though we'll probably have to wake him up in the middle of the night or something like that. But Hayden, you can always check out his column every Monday morning. Hayden, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you so much, Scott. Have a great night.
You too. That's been Hayden Nadolny, who is our senior NFL writer and columnist at silverandblacktoday.com. Always love having Hayden on. He's a fan favorite, and we appreciate it. We're going to step aside, tell you a little bit about all the people who make this podcast possible, and that, of course, is those who sponsor us and support us. You're listening to the Silver and Black Today podcast. We'll be right back. Hi, everybody. I hope you're enjoying the latest Silver and Black Today podcast. Of course, our podcast and our website, silverandblacktoday.com, all are brought to you by our sponsors who make it all possible, and we are forever grateful to them. So let me tell you a little bit about them now. First of all, our longest sponsor, our biggest sponsor as of date, is the local laborers union 872 here in Las Vegas. This is the men and women building the stadium, the new Raider Stadium here in Las Vegas. They're building our entire city. So we'd like to thank the laborers local 872 and their general business manager, Tommy White, for his continued support of Silver and Black Today and silverandblacktoday.com. We'd also like to thank criminal defense attorney Michael Troiano. Michael Troiano, you can learn more about him at troianovegaslaw.com. Just check our website, silverandblacktoday.com, and you can click right over to his. You know, nobody wants to have any trouble in their life, especially when it comes to criminal trouble, whether it's a DUI or something more serious. Michael is one of the best young guys in town. He's going to fight vigorously for you, so check him out as well. We'd also like to thank The Pint up on West Charleston. Eat, drink, and play at The Pint. They play Raiders games on Sundays or whatever days the Raiders playing. So if you want to go see them this week against the Seahawks at 10 in the morning, you can do so. And not only do they have the games up, and for those of you in Las Vegas, you'll get this, they always have the sound on for Raiders games. So make sure you check them out. Also want to thank Michael Westra, the Allstate insurance agent here in Las Vegas. This is a guy who really cares about you and your family. He's not just out there trying to sell you insurance. He is actually there for his community. He's done so much charity work here in the Las Vegas and Henderson area, but he also is the guy you want to see if you need home, life. Doesn't matter what it is, make sure you check out Michael Westra, Allstate Insurance here in Las Vegas. Want to again thank the sponsors who all make Silver and Black Today and silverandblacktoday.com possible. All right, we're back here on the Silver and Black Today podcast as the Raiders fly out to jolly old London. Yes. So we are going to, I think, on our Sunday CBS Sports Radio show, bring in a little tea and crumpets, yay? I can't do an English accent. Anyway, sorry about that. But yes, make sure you check out the show this week from 8 to 10 a.m. on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m. in Las Vegas. But we know so many of you in Raider Nation who listen to our show are outside of Las Vegas, and we're really stoked about that. Every time we get a call from outside the state, or we get somebody who comes on our Facebook live video feed when we're doing our show and talks to us from Alabama, from New York, from Denver, Colorado, doesn't matter where. We're so thankful that we have Raider fans who listen to us all over the country. And if you want to listen to us on Sunday, you can. The radio.com app. If you don't have the radio.com app, do yourself a favor, go download it. You can not only listen to our show, you can listen to our sister show, Sports Adrenaline Las Vegas, which is on Saturday mornings. And if you didn't know, we also have a post-game NFL show. That's right, myself, along with Tony Cordasco. We wrap up all of the day's action starting at 4 p.m. on the PG short for postgame. The PG every Sunday at 4 p.m. On radio.com and also on CBS Sports Radio 1140 a.m. This week, not only are we going to run you through all the games, including what happened with the Raiders in London, but we will also talk to Carrington Harrison from 610 Sports Radio in Kansas City and preview the big Chiefs-Patriots game on Sunday Night Football. So check that out. But, listen, we are at a point with the Raiders where I think if you're a Raiders fan, of course you're going to be upset that they're 1-4. Of course you're going to be upset that things aren't going the way you'd like them to, especially for fans who've had to deal with this for 15, 16 years of subpar football. But there is going to be pain, and like I always tell my kids sometimes, there is always, it's always darkest before the night, before the sun. So as it gets bad, and it may get worse this year, it might get better, we'll see. Just realize that there's a lot of rebuilding to do. This team was not close, and anybody who thought it was, I think it was just a case of wishful thinking. Jon Gruden coming back obviously was exciting for everybody, but it had a lot of holes. Defense, offense, you name it, and they're trying to address that. I'm not making excuses for anyone. I'm just being a realist and telling Raider Nation that if you stick with it, I think they'll get it straight, and if they don't, they don't. But what choice do you have? You can either think positively or think negatively, and I think this team will get things straightened out with Derek Carr. I've been a defender. I will continue to defend him because I don't think you give up on a guy that was going to be your franchise quarterback after 1 year actually not even 1 year. What am I saying? 5 games in a new system. Despite how poorly he's looked at times, there's also been times when he's looked good. So we'll have to see how that progresses. Now, again, as I said with Hayden earlier in the show, if we don't see some progression and see him make better decisions and learn from his mistakes, then there's some decisions to be made by Jon Gruden and team when they get to the offseason and they start to look at the future of this team as they prepare to move here, to move to Las Vegas, to move to their new stadium right off the Las Vegas Strip. So we'll see. But that's going to wrap it up for us on this podcast. We try to bring you as much as we can. We're working hard to do some really special things that we'll tell you about real soon. But make sure you check out the coverage from this past week on silverandblacktoday.com, including Matt Gutierrez up on our Facebook page. He was at the game, covered the game for silverandblacktoday.com, and has some great video there. Also, make sure you listen to the show from last week. And check out the PG. Go like the PGLV Facebook page and Twitter handle. And we really run down, the first thing we do every show, we run down the Raider game. We go in depth on the Raiders game and talk Raiders for, last time it was 3 segments, so a good 40 minutes to start off the show before we got to the other NFL action. So join us on that, and make sure you go read the website, of course, silverandblacktoday.com. We have great stuff up there, including from Chris Reed, our senior NFL analyst, who I think is one of the best in the business, does some really great, entertaining, and educational pieces, including his popular The Breakdown. And he's got one coming up this week, too, so make sure you look for that. As always, thank you guys for listening. You are the reason we exist. So everything that we do, we know is because of your support, and we appreciate that very, very much. For Hayden Nadolny, for everyone here on the team, including Matt Gutierrez and Chris Reed and all of our writers, Elias Trejo, everybody, want to thank you guys for joining us. We'll talk to you Sunday over on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m. Take care, everybody.